Thanks for tuning into BQ Conversations. Metro Brands is the company in focus. It added sportswear brand Fila to its portfolio last month, actually a bunch of brands, but Fila was the standout. And the question is, what does the addition of Fila plus a Pro line plus a few other brands do to an already strong growth trajectory for the company? Mr. Nissan Joseph, who is the CEO of Metro Brands, joins us right now to talk about that. Mr. Joseph, good having you. Thanks for joining in. Hope all is well.
Good afternoon, Neeraj, and thanks for having me. Yes.
And the pleasure is ours. So I wanted to talk a bit about that first and then come on to the overall growth numbers. Okay. What was the rationale for adding these brands, particularly Fila, to your portfolio?
Right. So if you look at the trajectory of Metro Brands, as you mentioned, we've had a great growth history in the past. We've had some very profitable years and a long CAGR of 18+% growth and profits. So one would think that it's a very well-established portfolio of brands. But if you looked inside, you'd notice that we were absent in the sports space. So that was a white space. And when you looked at our portfolio of brands between Metro, Mochi, Walkway, Crocs, and FitFlop, we did not have much of a sports presence. So now as we see the market shifting and getting more casual and more sports-oriented and health-oriented, we thought it was critical for us to get involved in the sporting goods space and in the sports footwear space especially. And we believe that this acquisition allows us to leverage the operational strengths that Metro already has in retailing, specifically in footwear retailing. So from a fit standpoint, it fit into the white space that we had in our portfolio of brands. From a fit standpoint, it also fit into the operational capabilities that Metro currently possesses. We're not going off into another industry. We're not, pivoting to something else. We are literally banking on our existing strong foundations to be able to take Fila and relaunch it in the country and take it to a new level.
And is there anecdotal evidence or global experience about how sportswear would have moved in other countries, which would have moved on from a per capita of 2,000 to wherever it is? And I don't even know if it's per capita linked or otherwise.
So I think it's really a matter of sports uptake, right? And also not only just sports uptake, because a lot of sporting goods shoes never actually see the intent they were intended for. A lot of basketball shoes never see a basketball court. A lot of running shoes never see a running track. Having said that, though, the take up in India versus that of China or the US is much less. And that's actually the good news, because we have nowhere to go but upwards. The market size today is pretty sizable, but not for a country the size of India. But when you look at the growth, sports footwear is going to outpace the growth of the rest of the footwear industry, and that's also true for sports apparel, and which is why Pro line is also a nice fit in our brand. So when we look to the future, we see some strong potential growth opportunities, both from just mining what's already existing and the fact that the market is growing quite considerably.
What are the numbers that you're attaching for the overall category to grow in? And considering that Fila, from a mind share perspective, Mr. Joseph, you admit that it could be classified as a relative newcomer in India, even though, you and a lot of others who use sporting goods for a while know about Fila as a long-standing brand. It's sponsored a bunch of tennis players, etc. But we don't see Fila as a very active brand in India.
That's correct. And it hasn't been very active in India. And that's where we see an upside opportunity, given our retail experience and our retail capabilities, to really bring the brand to life, not only across our existing doors, but also to open up a whole fleet of mono-branded stores for Fila and launch the brand in a very strong way in India. One of the things brands really need is retail placement. And without retail placement, it gets very hard for them to create a brand, to create velocity. We believe that Metro can create that velocity for the Fila brand. And you're right, I think it's not a top of mind brand today, but we see that as an opportunity, and I think it's nothing but positive for us.
Okay, so what are the numbers that you're attaching to the kind of growth? Internal estimates or otherwise?
Well, I think more than my numbers, I think what you need to do is look at the business out there of other players in the market. The average store count in the mono-branded space of other athletic footwear retailers tends to be somewhere in the 300 store range. When you look at other brands in the country, when you look at their overall sales, it's north of 1,000 crores. Having said that, these are just directional points of reference that I'm giving you. We will still be looking to first integrate the company into our operations, first and foremost, deciding on how we want to position Fila for the long term, and then having a rollout plan that really looks more towards a long-term establishment of the brand. This agreement with Fila is a multi-decade long agreement. So we're not in a rush to go out there and squeeze value the very first quarter that we have it. We really want to set this up. Metro's been in business for 70 years, and we really have a long-term view on everything we do. It's not a short run, squeeze something out and hope it works. We are going to plan this carefully. We're going to be thoughtful and thought out in how we move forward with Fila. But that gives you an idea of the existing sports landscape. We anticipate that landscape to grow at a 30% growth rate, given the huge influx of middle-class incomes rising, people being aware of their own health needs, and the casualization of footwear that's happening across the country.
30%, that's a strong number. Okay, you urge me to look at the growth rates of some of the players who are already there. I'll urge you to comment on the estimates that a few people are laying out from the analyst community on what Fila could do for you. The estimates are that it could contribute to about, say, 10%, give or take, of the overall revenues in FY23, which are pegged to be between 1,900 to 2,200 crores. Are these off the mark by a wide margin, or these are ballpark estimates, roughly correct?
Right now, what's important to me is to integrate the operations that we have, take stock of what we're getting in the brand, where the brand is positioned today in the consumer's mind, and then lay out a chart for the future of how we're going to grow this brand over the next 5 years. To me, an FY23 number is not the most critical data point that I am vectoring in on. I'm really looking at how do we set the brand up long term.
So let's talk about the slightly long term, Mr. Joseph, if you can. There is an estimate there too. People believe that, or that there are two notes which have come out, which I've read, which believe that Fila could do about 800 to 1,000 crores, 50% gross margins, and contribute to about 20-25% of Metro Brands' overall revenues. Do you have such estimates or ambitions in mind with regards to the Fila brand?
I think any good sports brand in India that is managed well, that is grown with operational rigor and a discipline to staying true to your brand message has that kind of potential. I'm not specifically speaking of Fila and Metro Brands, but any sports brand in India that's managed well has that potential. We are aware that that potential exists, and it's something as we as operators will be looking to see how we can maximize, meet, exceed the expectations that we have set for ourselves in that space, knowing fully well that the numbers that you mentioned are data points along the way that we'll be looking at in the next 5 years.
Okay, you are neither confirming nor denying, which is fine. I have one final question, really. How would because Metro, I've seen that brand through my existence in India since birth, right? And my question is, a lot of your stores would be how do I say it, for established stores with a lot of costs already put behind you, and therefore the per store revenue, per customer metrics would be very different from what would happen for an EBO for a new brand, I would reckon. Now, how does that therefore tie in with the existing metrics, whether it's operating cash flow converted into EBITDA or the gross margins that the existing stores enjoy, versus what Fila as a brand would do if you launch not the multi-brand outlet, but the exclusive brand outlets for Fila?
Yeah. So first of all, I don't think you can be a brand in India without having exclusive brand outlets. So that's the first data point. It's an absolute that you have to have them. Number one. Number two, we're very good at operating exclusive brand outlets. We've operated over 180 Crocs outlets currently, and have done so for the last few years. And we understand that there are metrics that you need to hit. The Crocs acquisition has been the Crocs partnership to open the EBOs and operate the EBOs has been accretive to us. We fully anticipate that all things we do tend to be at least not dilutive, if anything, but accretive to what we do. And I believe a brand like Fila has the opportunity to be accretive to what we do, but definitely not dilutive when you look at the financial numbers and the metrics that we would operate under. We typically come in at a 55 to 57% gross margin, and EBITDA north of 30%, and a PAT in the 15% range, which is a target we've had and maintained for quite a few years. And we see no reason for Fila in a period of time It may not be the first quarter, it may not be the first year, but in a period of time to definitely be accretive to those numbers.
Okay. This period of time would be not like over 5 years. You expect that to happen in maybe 2-3 years time or something like that?
Well, it's not so much we've set a number, but I think as you accelerate things, they need to quickly prove their value to the company. Rafiq Malik, our chairman, says retail does not have a gestation period. Things either work or they don't. Our stores we expect our stores to be profitable from day one. We expect our payback on cash to be within 2 years. Those are the same metrics and fundamentals and philosophies that we will bring to the Fila business.
Okay, one final question. You've done a fair degree of very interesting, I wouldn't call it string of pearls, but that kind of an acquisitive strategy, which is inorganic moves in order to complement what Metro Brands can do better. What else is in store? I mean, are you happy now with the brands that you have, or are you going to look out for larger brands to be added to the portfolio as well?
So
actively, I mean.
Everything we do, Neeraj, is from a customer backwards lens, right? So if we feel that we are not serving our consumer in their journey in our stores, we're very quick to look at brands that could complete that journey, elevate our stores, right? Metro is a very core business. Metro and Mochi are very core business to us that we have no intentions to take our eye off the ball when it comes to operating with them. Having said that, it's really the customer that decides what we should have. If you look at some of our recent additions, we've added Echo to our mix. We always carry high-end brands. We want to bring brands in that elevate us. We also do over 10% of our sales currently in sports with brands like Skechers and Adidas and Puma. So it's not like we've been absent in that space, and the reason we do that is the consumer wanted that, right? So we will be always on the lookout to see where our customer pivots or changes their desires to, and we will make sure that we are providing what they're looking for when they come into a Metro store. So it's really from that angle we come, as opposed to, I want X number of more brands into my portfolio.
Anything that the customer has told you, which you are going to add, which is a very large brand acquisition, something akin to a Fila in the near term?
So again, since we look at everything with the long-term view, we want to make sure we are focused on integrating and digesting and maximizing the opportunity on Fila first and foremost. Having said that, we're always aware of what our consumers are doing, and we'll stay alert and agile for anything that might come up.
Great. Mr. Joseph, this was lovely talking to you. Thanks so much. And I would love to maybe get some sense about the numbers as and when they come in around Fila and how well it is integrating in the quarters to come.
Sure. We'd be happy to share it, Neeraj, once we get going on it.
Sounds good. All the best for that. And thanks for talking to us today.
Thank you. My pleasure. Have a good day.
Thank you. And viewers, thanks for tuning into this conversation.